All right, let's get right into this. We're talking about an absolutely incredible true story from Guadalcanal. It's about one guy, one rifle that nobody believed in, going up against an entire team of elite enemy snipers. So picture this. It's 1943, and this is the reality for Second Lieutenant John George. Now, this guy was a state champion marksman, right? But in the middle of World War II, his own personal rifle, well, it was met with just complete skepticism. Everyone saw it as a toy, something you'd use to hunt deer, definitely not something for fighting a war. And here's where you can really see the difference. On one side, you've got the standard issue M1 Garand. I mean, this thing was the workhorse of the U.S. Army. Semi-automatic, held 8 rounds. Then you have George's rifle, this Winchester Model 70. It's a bolt-action sporting rifle, only holds 5 rounds, but, and this is the kicker, it had a Lyman Alaskan scope. That gave him magnification that basically no one else on the battlefield had. But to his bosses, it just looked slow, fragile, not up to the job. So let's back up a bit to 1942. George, who was already a champion marksman before the war, gets shipped out to the Pacific. But his rifle doesn't make it with him. He literally had to have it mailed to him on the front lines. Can you imagine? When this wooden crate shows up, stamped fragile, his buddies just lost it. They started calling it his mail order sweetheart and just gave him a ton of grief for it. But yeah, nobody was laughing about the actual situation on Guadalcanal. The 132nd Infantry Regiment was in a really, really bad spot. They were facing this deadly, totally invisible enemy. Elite Japanese snipers had moved into these super dense jungle groves near a place called Point Cruz, and they were just systematically terrorizing the American troops. And we're not talking about just a couple of guys. Intel reports said there were at least 11 of them, and these weren't your average soldiers with rifles. No, these were highly skilled, expert marksmen. They were using the jungle's massive banyan trees as these perfect, completely hidden sniper nests. And they were devastatingly effective. I mean, they were picking off soldiers doing the simplest things, filling up a canteen, walking a patrol, anywhere they could get a shot. In no time at all, 14 American soldiers were dead. You can just imagine what that did to morale. It was absolutely tanking. And get this, all of this happened in just 3 days, 72 hours. To put that in perspective, the battalion was losing more guys to these snipers than they were to malaria, which was a huge problem out there. It was a rate of loss they couldn't sustain it. Something had to give. So here's the turning point, right? All the usual tactics, they weren't working. His men are dying. The battalion commander is getting desperate. So who does he call? He calls in George, the guy with the weird rifle everyone's been making fun of. And he basically asks him, all right, can that toy of yours actually do anything useful? Okay, so now we get to the main event. George goes and sets himself up in the ruins of an old Japanese bunker. It gives him a perfect vantage point looking over the groves from about 240 yards away. And this wasn't just going to be a simple hunt. This was about to become a high-stakes, strategic 3-day duel. And for the next 3 days, things got incredibly intense. George just starts to methodically turn the tables. On the very first day alone, he takes out 5 of the enemy snipers. That scope was the key. It let him see the tiniest movements that nobody else could. He was literally hunting the hunters. And this is where it becomes a real battle of wits. It's fascinating. After that first day, the snipers who were left, they got smart. They stopped moving around during the day. Then, on day 2, they adapted again. They figured out where George was, triangulated his position, and started calling in mortar fire on him. They were hunting him now, forcing him to get out of his bunker and keep moving. So by day 3, you can bet that only the smartest, most experienced snipers were left. And they decide to set this really elaborate trap. They put one guy out in the open, pretty much, in a palm tree. Total bait. The idea was to get George to shoot at him so a second hidden sniper could then take George out. But George didn't take the bait. He knew something was off. It just seemed too easy. So he waits. For 11 minutes, he just scans the area with his scope. And then he finds him. The real threat. Hidden way back in a banyan tree. And then he does something brilliant. He uses their own trap against them. He takes a shot at the decoy, the bait. The sound of the shot makes the real sniper flinch or move, just for a second, giving away his exact position. And bang. A moment later, George took him out too. And just like that, it was over. All 11 snipers were gone. The threat to Point Cruz was neutralized. And all that mockery George had been dealing with, it just vanished overnight. Instead, there was just awe, respect, and pretty soon, a brand new mission coming down from high command.
You see, his commander, a Colonel Ferry, he realized that what George had just pulled off wasn't some lucky fluke. It was a skill that could be taught. And that kind of expertise was way too valuable to just keep with one guy and his one special rifle.
So what happened next? George gets a new job. He's tasked with building the regiment's first ever formal sniper program, completely from scratch. He gets his hands on 14 scoped Springfield rifles that the Marines had left behind, and he trains 40 of the regiment's best marksmen, teaching them everything he knew about precision shooting and, crucially, jungle concealment. The results were, well, they were immediate and they were absolutely staggering. In just their first 12 days of operations, George's new sniper team racked up 74 confirmed enemy kills. And, the most important number, 0 friendly casualties. He didn't just solve a problem, he had created a whole new solution. But the story for Lieutenant George and that famous Winchester doesn't stop there, not by a long shot. His expertise was suddenly in very high demand, and he was about to get sent on some of the war's most dangerous missions. He actually went on to volunteer for and serve with the legendary Merrill's Marauders. I mean, these guys were famous. He had to adapt his rifle and his tactics for these super long-range patrols deep behind enemy lines in the jungles of Burma, which was, without a doubt, one of the toughest places to fight in the entire war. And even after the war, he wasn't done. He sat down and documented everything he'd experienced with this incredible clinical precision. The book he wrote, Shots Fired in Anger, became an absolute classic on jungle warfare and tactics. To this day, military historians still use it as a key reference. And what about the rifle itself? That mail-order sweetheart that everybody laughed at? Well, today it's preserved as a priceless piece of history. You can go see it in a display case at the National Firearms Museum, a quiet testament to its incredible story. So, when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? This one single engagement proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the incredible value of putting specialized equipment in the hands of a true expert. It really forced a massive shift in how the American military thought about the role of the individual marksman in a modern war. And that really leaves us with a question that's just as important today as it was back then, right? In our modern military, with all its high-tech, standardized gear, what's more valuable? Giving everyone the same equipment, or empowering individual mastery with specialized tools? It's a debate that literally started in the jungles of World War II, and it's one that's still going on right now.